the most famous ones was a lady called Bonnie Hicks. Bonnie Hicks was, she was Eurasian. Her father, I can't remember if her father was British or American, and her mom was Chinese. She was a model. She was a famous photography, fashion model, and she was also a best-selling writer. Her first, and she published at least 2 books. Excuse Me, Are You a Model? And Disgust. And people think, like, okay, so she's a model. She, of course it's going to be a bestseller because people like books with useful people in the front. But the truth is, she actually was a good writer. You check that book out of the library, and it's not splendid literary writing, but it's real and it's honest. And one of the things she talked about was the fact that she was bisexual. And this was in 1990, and this was before any other, there'd been a lesbian play, a lesbian anything. She often been, because she's not regarded as a real literary writer, she's been left out of our sort of literary record on queer people. But I would like to restore her with the help of Deborah Emanuel. Deborah?
She dropped me off later at the club where I worked out. I kissed her before I jumped out of the car. I don't know what made me do that. It was not something I had thought about doing. I certainly didn't plan it. In the days that followed, she became a big part of my thoughts. I wanted to see her after work, but on the other hand, I wanted her to remain a fantasy as well. The former proved to be the greater desire. I had 2 tickets to a play. I invited her. She accepted. I took pains in dressing up that night. I wanted to look beautiful for her. Sitting so close to her in the theater made watching the play impossible. I stole glances at her all through the performance. By the end of it, I'd taken in every detail of her profile, and none from the play. And then the truth hit me, and I was frightened, excited, suspicious, and aroused all at once. I was in love with her. I couldn't comprehend it. I still don't. It defied my beliefs, my upbringing, and my logic. But that made it all the more exciting. We went for a drink after the play, and I was desperately hanging on to every minute we were spending together, not wanting the evening to end. Part of me was also afraid that come tomorrow, I wouldn't have the courage to pursue anymore. We talked for a long time at the coffee house. What I'd seen of Pat Chan at work was only the tip of the iceberg. She was far more interesting than I'd ever imagined. Her ideas were refreshingly unconventional and unpredictable. She was so talented that one was inclined to believe that God was decidedly biased in the process of creation. Slowly I got to know Pat Chan and her friend. They were all boisterous and dynamic people with strong personalities. I was completely caught up in this new and exciting world. They accepted me unconditionally, and I was proud to be part of that elite circle. At the time that I met Pat, I was planning to move out of my granny's to stay on my own. I couldn't afford to rent an entire apartment, but I was looking to share a flat with a friend. I told Pat my plans, and she said I could move into the spare room she had. Needless to say, I grabbed the opportunity to live with her, to see her every day. We started spending a lot of time together. We would sit down to have long conversations when she came back home from work. She began to mold me. For someone who was still a little lost in life with no particular direction, I was most receptive. I hung on to every word she had to say and strived to be the person she wanted me to be. I wanted her approval. She got to know me inside out, and I came to understand her a little too. The first thing that hit me was that she was not as much in control of her feelings as she was of her work. She was very vulnerable. Like all of us, she could be hurt, and very often she was, by my insensitivity. To paraphrase her, I grew up at her expense. I lived in a world of I, me, and mine. She didn't allow that. She took the time and the trouble to tell me off, to put me down. She didn't tolerate the arrogance of youth, the feeling that you're young and beautiful and everything is possible. She kept reminding me that there would always be models younger and more beautiful. I was often plagued by insecurity, and her constant reminder didn't help things. I turned to her for advice. She responded positively to being needed. She told me what I should do, how I should say things, how I should dress. I became totally dependent. I didn't have the confidence to make my own decisions, to live my own life. I needed her. Once Pat Chan accepts you, she is generous with her time and her emotions. She gave me everything I could possibly need, mentally and materially. When she went shopping and saw something that would look nice on me, she would buy it for me. I was completely taken care of. I was completely indulged. Pat and I were seen often in public together. We attended fashion shows, watched movies, went to the openings of boutiques and inn parties. I don't have to tell you that Singapore is a small place and one that thrives on gossip. People started to talk about us, speculating as to whether we were lovers. Even my friends and family began to wonder. Most drew their own conclusions. I was regarded as weird by many people. Social rejection became so strong it was almost tangible. I have sought approval all my life. This new surge of rejection was not something I handled gracefully. I was bitter towards people who judged me for what I believed in. I was angry at those who claimed to love me and yet did not take the time to try and understand. Pat, however, having been in the limelight most of her life, took it all in her stride. She always said that she'd rather be infamous than a nobody. The rumors and gossip brought us closer together. It was the two of us against the world. I clung on to Pat, not knowing and not daring to strike out on my own. I became even more dependent. I didn't have my own thoughts anymore. In time, I began to doubt my self-worth. Who was I? What was I? I didn't know anymore. I began to resent not having an identity of my own. I wanted to be free to make my own mistakes, take my own chances, and simply to live my own life. That was, to begin with, the reason I broke away from my mother. I found myself trapped. Because Pat was what she was, an overpowering and domineering character, my own growth was crippled. I wasn't strong enough to hold my own against her. I constantly felt less intelligent, unoriginal, boring, and weak next to her. I had to find myself. And to do that, I needed to break away. Perhaps Pat didn't understand that. Perhaps she felt I had made use of her. Perhaps she felt she was no use to me anymore. Perhaps she felt cheated because her creation grew wings and wanted to fly away on its own. I will never know what she thinks because we don't speak anymore. It hurts me to know that the 9 months which we spent so intimately together has ended like this. Sometimes I want to forget that it ever happened, but I can't. The fact that I'm a model, the fact that I've been given the opportunity to write this book, the fact that I'm no longer the worst dressed model, the fact that I'm that much stronger is all because of Pat Chan.